Perhaps the notice has already shown up in your mailbox, or perhaps it is still on its way. But while your life continued as normal, the regulations governing your retirement income were quietly rewritten overnight. Everything you previously understood about your monthly benefit ceiling may no longer apply. The updated $994 maximum is not simply a figure buried inside a government spreadsheet. It represents a genuine financial lifeline that countless senior citizens are on the verge of losing purely because they have not been told how to access it properly. Washington just accelerated the passage of legislation that fundamentally reshapes the rules surrounding your SSI and Social Security payments. For a portion of recipients, this represents a long overdue increase in monthly income. For others, it is a bureaucratic snare that could halt their payments completely within the coming weeks. You dedicated 4 decades of your life to working. You contributed faithfully to a system that made a promise to support you when the time came. Yet right now, buried within this 2026 policy update, there exists a specific deadline that the evening news has completely ignored. If you allow that window to close without acting, the $994 maximum will remain nothing more than a distant wish, while your existing payments continue to fall further behind the rising cost of everything around you. Extensive time has been spent examining the fine print of this proposal, and what emerged from that research changes the picture entirely for anyone who has passed the age of 62. The critical question you need answered right now is whether you are among the seniors positioned to receive an automatic benefit increase, or whether you are unknowingly drifting toward the group whose payments could be interrupted. That question carries real weight, and it deserves your full attention. So take a steady breath, because every piece of this is going to be broken down together, one step at a time, in plain and honest language. Here is something worth understanding about the way these legislative changes get introduced. When new bills emerge from Washington, the language used to describe them is almost always dense, technical, and deliberately difficult to absorb. But stripped of all that complexity, this conversation is fundamentally about the money you use to buy food, cover your rent, and maintain some sense of security in your daily life. This is not an abstract policy discussion. This is about the dignity that you built through a lifetime of showing up and doing the work. Significant time has been devoted to examining the specific language contained within this $994 maximum adjustment and the broader 2026 Social Security update. And the distance between what the news headlines suggest and what the actual fine print contains is larger than it has been in recent memory. That gap is precisely why this kind of detailed examination matters so much. It is genuinely painful to imagine a senior citizen sitting at their kitchen table staring at an unpaid bill, while a benefit they are fully entitled to sits just beyond their reach simply because of an unchecked box or a misunderstood policy change. Now let us focus directly on that $994 figure, because that is the number dominating conversations in senior communities right now. In previous years, benefit adjustments were so small they barely registered. A few extra dollars here and there, hardly enough to offset even minor increases in everyday expenses. But the 2026 shift carries a different character entirely. It is connected to a fundamental reconsideration of how the cost of living is measured and applied to the senior population. For many years, advocates have argued loudly and persistently that the existing inflation measurement tools failed to capture the actual spending reality of older Americans. Rising healthcare premiums and the relentless climb of prescription medication costs were largely invisible in those old calculations. This new proposal directly confronts that problem and begins to correct it. However, there is a critical detail missing from the simplified news coverage. Reaching that maximum payment level is not automatic. The updated system now evaluates a new collection of criteria related to your current living situation and any additional income sources you may have. This is not a passive update that adjusts your check without any involvement on your part. There is a human responsibility attached to this process, and being proactive is the only way to ensure you receive what you are entitled to. Many people have shared through comments and messages that the Social Security system often feels deliberately confusing, almost as though it was designed to discourage participation and keep money away from the people it was meant to serve. That frustration is completely understandable, and it is precisely that reality which makes community, shared information, and clear explanation so essential. If this breakdown is helping you feel more confident and informed in a world that rarely offers either, please consider supporting this work by liking the video and subscribing. A community built around honest, accessible information is one where nobody has to face these complex changes without guidance. Every subscription is a commitment to staying connected and never missing an update that could directly affect your financial well-being. Returning now to the hidden deadline referenced at the outset, this is a detail that deserves careful attention. As part of the 2026 updates, the government is transitioning toward a more digitized process for verifying eligibility. Officials are describing it as a modernization effort, but for many seniors who are not spending their days in front of a computer screen, this new process functions more like an obstacle than an improvement. There is a defined period during which you must confirm your current housing costs in order to qualify for the higher benefit tier under the SSI increase. Simply waiting and expecting your check to automatically reflect the new maximum could leave you locked into the 2025 payment rate, while others around you begin receiving the updated $994 level. Advocating for yourself within this system is no longer optional. It is essential. Picture where you could be 6 months from now. Imagine sitting in the same spot you are in today, but instead of that familiar tension that builds every time an envelope arrives in the mail, you feel steady and secure. That sense of calm is available to you, and it begins with spending a small amount of time today understanding exactly what these new regulations require. That is the genuine power of being informed. It is the distinction between being swept along by a system you do not understand and standing firmly in control of the outcomes it produces for you. It is also worth acknowledging the emotional exhaustion that comes with watching your financial security treated as though it were a piece in a political game. Bills get introduced, veto threats follow, and in the meantime, the price of groceries climbs again. The burden of navigating all of this while simply trying to live your life is real, and it is heavy. But what stands out about this particular 2026 update is that it reflects genuine momentum toward correcting long-standing problems, including the so-called marriage penalty and other outdated provisions that have artificially suppressed SSI payments for years. This is not merely about a modest increase in monthly income. It represents a broader shift in how the nation's policies treat and value its older citizens. Bipartisan backing for these improvements is stronger now than it has been in quite some time, largely because there is growing recognition that financially supported seniors contribute meaningfully to the broader economy. When you have more money available, you spend it in local businesses, you support your grandchildren, you remain engaged in your community. That money does not disappear. It circulates and creates value, so let there be no confusion about the nature of this benefit. It is not charity, it is not assistance, it is a debt that was accumulated over all the years you spent constructing the world that surrounds us today. As the calendar moves toward the end of the year and the beginning of the next fiscal cycle, keeping a close watch on your My Social Security online account is strongly encouraged. If you prefer working with physical documents, maintaining a dedicated folder for the paper notices that will begin arriving in late 2025 is equally effective. A specific form is expected to be released carrying a new 2026 revision designation, and it will deal directly with the asset limit reform that is another major component of this update. For far too long, holding even a modest amount in savings was enough to disqualify seniors from receiving their full benefits. This new legislation targets that problem directly, aiming to raise those thresholds significantly so that you can actually maintain an emergency reserve without fear of losing your monthly payment. The ability to set aside money for unexpected expenses, a failing water heater, a necessary car repair, represents a fundamental change in the relationship between seniors and the benefit system. And it is one of the primary reasons the $994 maximum is now genuinely within reach for a much larger portion of the senior population than it has ever been before. Now it is time to address the clerical trap that was mentioned at the very beginning, because this is the specific area where most people end up losing money they were rightfully owed. The Social Security Administration has a well-documented history of sending correspondence that either resembles promotional mail or uses language that sounds alarming when it is actually just requesting routine information. Within the 2026 rollout, updated figures related to in-kind support and maintenance are going to be requested. If you currently live with another person, or if family members assist you with household expenses, the old regulations penalized you for that support by reducing your benefit amount. The updated rules are designed to ease those restrictions significantly. But the burden of notifying the agency that your circumstances have changed falls entirely on you. Initiating that conversation is your responsibility. The goal here is to make sure you are never the person who loses hundreds of dollars every month because important paperwork sat on a countertop for too long. Staying on top of these developments together, breaking down each new form as it is released, and making sure the meaning behind the language is never left to guesswork is the commitment being made to you here. What it ultimately comes down to is this. The retirement landscape in the United States is undergoing significant transformation. The foundational promises made to working Americans are being renegotiated, and while that process can feel deeply unsettling, it also opens a window to demand something better. This new legislation represents meaningful progress, but its benefits only reach the people who understand how to navigate it. Staying engaged is not optional. Continuing to ask questions is not optional, and perhaps most importantly, remembering that you are not navigating this alone is essential. There are millions of people in identical circumstances, carrying identical concerns and facing identical challenges. When information is shared openly, when dialogue happens in comments and conversations, and when people support one another through the confusion, a collective voice emerges that policymakers cannot afford to dismiss. The assumption in Washington is often that seniors will remain passive and uninformed. Proving that assumption wrong begins with exactly what you are doing right now. As you move through your daily routine after watching this, carry a slightly lighter feeling with you. There is a genuine path to the $994 maximum, and there is a framework in place to help you reach it. The headlines will continue to be monitored. The fine print will continue to be read. And the shared commitment is to make 2026 the year you finally receive the financial acknowledgement you have earned through a lifetime of contribution. There is still more to cover regarding the earnings test provisions referenced in the detailed analysis of this legislation, particularly for anyone who is still working part-time to supplement their income. The method being used to calculate that additional earnings is also being reconsidered for 2026. For some recipients, this could translate into retaining several hundred extra dollars each month that was previously being reclaimed by the system. That alone makes this year a genuinely significant turning point for many people. Thank you sincerely for the time you have invested here and for the trust you extend by showing up for these conversations. Keep watching your mailbox, keep monitoring your online account, and hold on to the belief that better circumstances are ahead. Every bit of what is coming to you through this system was earned, and not a single dollar of it should be left unclaimed. If you are still watching at this point, it reflects something meaningful about your character. You are not the kind of person who allows life to simply happen around you. You are engaged. You are advocating for yourself. And in a world that frequently treats older Americans as an afterthought, that posture is both powerful and important. Set aside the technical terminology for just a moment, the $994 ceiling, the asset thresholds, the filing deadlines. Put all of that to the side briefly and consider what this conversation is really about at its core. It is about freedom, the freedom to move through your days without a persistent undercurrent of financial anxiety. Freedom from the constant worry about what happens if the car fails inspection, if property taxes increase again, or if a medical procedure falls outside what insurance will cover. Every effort made to track these legislative changes and share them clearly is an effort made on behalf of your right to experience retirement without that weight. You invested 4 decades, possibly 5, into building this country. You worked the long shifts. You raised children. You paid every tax that was owed. You fulfilled every obligation. What is being discussed here is not generosity from the government. It is the completion of a commitment that was made to you many years ago. Stories emerge regularly from people navigating these exact circumstances. The grandmother rationing her own prescription medication so she can afford birthday gifts for a grandchild. The veteran buried beneath layers of confusing paperwork just to access benefits earned through military service. Those realities are precisely why a brief summary is never sufficient. The full picture is owed to you. Someone needs to be reading page 14 and page 50 and page 100 of these massive pieces of legislation, because the details that most directly affect your life are consistently found in those overlooked sections. The clerical traps discussed earlier are embedded in those quiet corners of the law, but when information is shared openly and people face these challenges together, those traps lose their effectiveness. As 2026 continues to unfold, make a personal commitment to yourself. Commit to refusing to allow the complexity of this system to push you into silence. When an envelope arrives with language that feels cold or incomprehensible, do not put it in a drawer unopened. Bring it into the conversation. Ask what it means. The likelihood is that thousands of other people receive the identical letter, and when the question is raised openly, the confusion dissolves. Information is consistently the most effective remedy for anxiety. Understanding what is approaching allows you to prepare. Preparation returns control to you, and control is exactly where you deserve to be positioned. For anyone who has watched legislative proposals fall apart before reaching completion, the skepticism is completely valid. Years of proposed reforms that never crossed the finish line have earned a cautious response. But the case for 2026 being a genuine turning point rests on a simple demographic reality. The population of senior citizens in this country has never been larger, and that population's collective voice has never been harder to dismiss. Politicians are increasingly recognizing that engaged older voters represent not just a demographic group, but an informed and motivated movement. Whether the conversation centers on the $10,000 asset limit reform or the $994 SSI adjustment, these are no longer matters of preference. They are economic necessities. A functioning economy requires that the people who built its foundation are adequately supported. The community that forms around this kind of information sharing is itself something worth acknowledging. Every time a video is shared with a neighbor, a friend at a community gathering, or a family member who might benefit, the collective strength of that community grows. People helping each other navigate account access issues, people offering genuine encouragement to someone processing grief while simultaneously managing survivor benefit paperwork. That kind of mutual support is rare and meaningful. Whether you have been part of this conversation for a long time or you are arriving here for the first time, you are welcome. Background and circumstances do not determine your place here. If you are navigating retirement, there is a seat at this table waiting for you. Upcoming coverage will include a thorough examination of the in-kind support changes currently moving through the legislative process. For anyone who shares a home with family members, this is a development that could represent a substantial difference in monthly income. Close attention is also being paid to ongoing Senate deliberations surrounding related legislation, and any confirmed developments will be shared immediately. Before closing today, take one small action for yourself. Find a mirror and remind yourself directly that you are worth every dollar this system owes you. You are worth the $994. You are worth the full measure of dignity and financial security that these programs were designed to deliver. No government form and no impersonal letter has the authority to reduce you to a case number. You carry a history, a legacy, and a future that deserves to be honored. The commitment here is to remain present and continue providing the clearest possible picture of what is ahead. The road forward may still have difficult stretches. There will be more alarming headlines and more legislative uncertainty. But the approach remains steady, eyes on the information that matters, connection to a community that shares it honestly, and an unwavering sense of hope, not as a passive feeling, but as an active strategy for continuing to move forward regardless of what obstacles appear. Thank you for your time and your trust. Verify everything shared here against official sources. The description contains links to the relevant documentation. Go take a moment for yourself. You have navigated every difficult day life has placed in front of you so far, and this update is no different. The next piece of this conversation is already being prepared. Until then, take care of yourself, stay curious, and know with certainty that you are neither alone nor invisible. This conversation continues in the comments and in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Wonderful.